The series follows a woman who joins a gang to avenge her father's death and ends up working as a mole for them inside the police force. Our main character is Ji Woo. Her dad is a gangster and nobody knows where he is. One day, while she's heading to school, a police car starts following her, asking if she knows where her dad is. She ignores them, but they keep following her all the way to school. At school, things aren't much better. The other girls are mean to her. Later, Ji Woo sees the police officers talking with the school principal. Soon after, a teacher tells her the school is transferring her because other parents don't want their kids going to school with the daughter of a gangster. Back in class, the girls tease her again. This time, Ji Woo loses her temper and hits one of them. A fight breaks out, and Ji Woo beats them all, reminding them that she's the daughter of a gangster, so she can handle them. When the teacher comes in, Ji Woo hands in her school badge and says she's dropping out. Angry, she storms outside, smashes the police car, and runs off. The officer chases her, yelling at her to stop. She eventually ends up by a riverbank, a place she used to visit with her dad. Later that evening, as she heads home, the same officer asks if she's coming back from seeing her dad. She doesn't answer and goes straight to her apartment. Outside, she finds a cake and a gift from her dad. Furious, she kicks the cake aside and storms inside, angry at how her life is falling apart because of him. Her dad tries calling her, but she ignores it. After a few calls, she finally picks up. Her dad apologizes for not being around and says he sent the cake and a gift, hoping she likes them. He asks how school is going. Ji Woo tells him that the police have been following her for a month, and the girls at school harass her. Her dad is surprised and asks why she didn't tell him. She says his phone was always off, so she couldn't reach him. He tries to comfort her, saying he'll fix everything, but Ji Woo cuts him off, telling him it's too late and that she doesn't want to see him again. Later, Ji Woo's dad checks his phone and realizes she had messaged him many times over the past month, telling him about the harassment she's been facing. Angry and upset, he goes out to confront the police. He finds the officers and beats them up before heading to Ji Woo's apartment. When he gets there, he sees the cake and gift still lying outside. He tries to open the door, but it's locked from the inside. The noise wakes Ji Woo. Just then, a man wearing a hoodie appears. When Ji Woo's dad sees him, he quickly grips the door lock tightly so Ji Woo can't open it. Ji Woo sees her dad standing outside, but suddenly, the man shoots him. Ji Woo tries to unlock the door, but her dad holds it shut from the outside, trying to protect her. The man shoots him again and then runs off. Ji Woo hears her dad speaking from the other side of the door. He apologizes for all the pain he's caused her. Finally, Ji Woo manages to open the door and goes outside, yelling for help, but no one comes. The next day, at her dad's funeral, a gangster named Choi Moo Jin shows up. He lights a cigarette and places it in the incense holder as a tribute. Ji Woo angrily asks him what her dad did that got him killed and who was behind it. Mr. Choi simply says that her dad was his best man. It turns out her dad and Mr. Choi were like brothers. After the funeral, Ji Woo goes to the police and asks why they closed her dad's case. The officer tells her that they couldn't find the murder weapon or any witnesses. Ji Woo then shows him a picture of the man who killed her dad and demands to know why they haven't caught him. The officer says he's been investigating her dad for a month and implies that if she had spoken up earlier, her dad might still be alive. Later, Ji Woo goes to Mr. Choi. She shows him the photo and tells him that it is the guy who killed her dad. Mr. Choi asks her what she plans to do if they find him, and Ji Woo replies that she will handle him herself. Mr. Choi looks at her and asks if she even knows how to kill someone. He hands her a knife and says to just imagine he killed her dad. Ji Woo freezes, unable to move. Mr. Choi slaps her and orders someone to throw her out. She gathers her things and leaves. The killer returns, and this time Ji Woo sees his face. He knocks on her door repeatedly, but she doesn't open it. Eventually, he leaves. Determined to catch him, Ji Woo chases after him but loses track of him in the streets. Frustrated, she decides to find him on her own. She starts putting up photos of the killer all around the neighborhood. Later, Mr. Choi notices one of the photos on a wall and takes it down. That night, Ji Woo gets a call from an unknown number. The voice on the other end says he knows the man she's looking for and gives her an address, telling her to bring money. Ji Woo grabs some cash, a knife for protection, and heads out. When she arrives, she realizes the people who called her are local thugs. She gives them the money, but they start beating her up. Ji Woo fights back, but she's outnumbered and eventually overpowered. They throw her into the trunk of a car, planning to get rid of her. Scared, Ji Woo clutches her knife, preparing to defend herself. Suddenly, she hears the sound of a crash. Moments later, the trunk opens, and someone grabs the knife from her hand. It's Mr. Choi. He looks at her and tells her if she wants to die, there are easier ways to do it. Angry, Ji Woo replies that the police aren't doing anything, and he isn't either, asking what she is supposed to do, just let it go. Mr. Choi tells her that if she really wants to kill someone, she needs to learn how first. He then takes her to a rundown gym where he trains fighters. Ji Woo is the first girl ever to train there. When Mr. Choi introduces her as the new member, everyone stares at her. A guy named Kang Jae offers to show her around and tells her that from now on, she will be doing all the cleaning and laundry. He points to a building and adds that once she is trained in fighting, that is where she will go. Afterward, Ji Woo carefully places her father's ashes on a slab. Most of the people around her treat her badly, and when she tries to practice, they block her way and make it hard for her. Later, when everyone else is asleep, Ji Woo practices by herself. Mr. Choi finds her and asks if she's planning to run away. She tells him she's not running, she's thinking about winning. Mr. Choi tells her to focus on defeating her opponents, not just winning. He teaches her how to fight smart, showing her how to target weak spots like the lips, chin, chest, and throat if necessary. Mr. Choi starts training Ji Woo, and she learns quickly. He notices that she has natural talent, but she's not strong enough yet. He's determined to help her get stronger, not only for herself, but so she can get revenge for her father's death. Ji Woo pushes herself hard during training. Every time she practices, she imagines her dad's killer in front of her, which makes her work even harder. A few days later, Mr. Choi organizes a competition. The new recruits are locked in a cage, forced to fight one another, and the winner gets a week off and some prize money. In the end, it comes down to Ji Woo and Kang Jae. Kang Jae is fighting for the thrill, but Ji Woo is fighting to survive. In the end, Ji Woo wins the fight and Mr. Choi announces her as the winner of the competition. After the match, when Kang Jae wakes up, his friends mock him for losing. That night, as Ji Woo is cleaning up, Kang Jae shows up. She apologizes for beating him in the competition, but he brushes it off, saying it was just a game, someone had to lose. When he goes back to his room, Kang Jae tells his friends that he spiked Ji Woo's drink. After drinking it, Ji Woo starts feeling dizzy. Kang Jae and his friends try to take advantage of her. Even though she's weak and out of it, Ji Woo manages to push one of them away. In the struggle, the pot holding her father's ashes falls and breaks. Even in this vulnerable moment, Ji Woo doesn't back down. Kang Jae grabs a hammer and approaches her, but just then, Mr. Choi arrives in time to stop him. Later, Mr. Choi pulls out a sword and asks Kang Jae which part he should chop off, his face, hands, or legs. Kang Jae quickly apologizes, saying that he is Mr. Choi's best guy. Mr. Choi replies that is exactly why he is not killing him. Instead, Mr. Choi takes a knife and carves a deep mark on Kang Jae's face. He wants Kang Jae to remember his mistake every time he looks in the mirror. Meanwhile, Ji Woo starts to come to her senses and places her dad's ashes in a box, crying. Just then, Mr. Choi's right-hand man, Tae-ju, arrives. He tells her that if she wants to cry, she can do it somewhere else. He mentions her dad, saying he wasn't fit for a criminal gang, and neither is she. Later, Mr. Choi meets Ji Woo at a restaurant. He tells her that from now on she will live as Hae-jin. He hands her a revolver, explaining that the gun was used to kill her dad and that the killer left it behind. He adds that it belongs to the police department and that her dad's killer is a police officer. He instructs her to find him and take him out. After training hard for years, Ji Woo joins the police force in 2019. She has two main reasons for this choice: to find her dad's killer and to protect Mr. Choi's gang. Fast forward 2 years, and Ji Woo is on a mission. She follows a suspect into a building, leaving her partner waiting outside. But officers from the narcotics department catch him and start interrogating him. He doesn't say a word. Ji Woo sneaks into the building and realizes there's a lot of shady activity happening inside. She discovers an unconscious girl and tries to wake her up. Then she spots a deal going down, led by a guy named Jeon Pil. Suddenly, Ji Woo breaks the glass and starts fighting them. Jeon Pil and his partner from the narcotics department were there for a sting operation, but Ji Woo completely messed up their plan. She ends up arresting the guy for murder. Frustrated, Jeon Pil asks her who she is, and she replies that she is Hae Jin from the violent crimes department. Jeon Pil is annoyed, saying that she just ruined 6 months of their hard work. At that moment, Ji Woo's captain calls her, telling her to hand over the criminal to Jeon Pil. She agrees and leaves the scene. The next day, Ji Woo goes to the narcotics department, where she meets Captain Cha Gi-hoo. He looks familiar because she remembers seeing him at her door, but she's not sure if it's the same guy. The captain brings her into his office and asks why she messed up the mission the night before. He also wants to know why she has applied to join his team twice, but Ji Woo doesn't say anything. Eventually, the captain tells her she's officially on his team. That night, Ji Woo meets with Mr. Choi. He asks how her life is going. Ji Woo tells him she's going to the narcotics department to find out who used a gun to kill her dad. She suspects Captain Cha might be involved. Mr. Choi points to a warehouse and tells her that 10 years ago, her dad saved his life there. He then gives her his knife and tells her to find and take out the person who killed his friend. Meanwhile, at the police station, Jeon Pil is questioning the guy they arrested. The suspect keeps mumbling about someone named Mongo. Jeon Pil quickly calls his informant to find out where Mongo is. Just then, he sees Ji Woo and asks what she's doing there. She tells him she's been transferred to this department. Captain Cha arrives and introduces Ji Woo. He informs Jeon Pil that she'll be working with him. Jeon Pil isn't happy about it, but he has to accept it. He tells the captain about Mongo, and the captain tells him to arrest him. Suddenly, Jeon Pil gets a call from his informant, who tells him to hurry. Meanwhile, Mr. Choi gets a big order for goods, and Taeju arrives. Mr. Choi tells Taeju that Ji Woo has joined the narcotics department, which could help them. Taeju is skeptical about Ji Woo and says that if anything goes wrong, he'll handle it himself. Later, Jeon Pil takes Ji Woo to a parking lot and tells her to go inside and grab Mongo. When she enters the building, a guard tries to stop her, but she quickly takes him down. Jeon Pil had hoped Ji Woo would back off, thinking it would be easier to catch Mongo outside. But Ji Woo is really good at fighting, her years of training are paying off. After a while, Jeon Pil starts to worry about how long Ji Woo has been inside and decides to check on her. To his surprise, he finds that Ji Woo has already taken care of everything. She hasn't run away, and Mongo hasn't escaped. Jeon Pil asks Mongo where the goods are, but Mongo insists that there is nothing there. He adds that Jeon Pil is messing up the business and that he told him there is nothing there. Still, Jeon Pil begins to search the place. Ji Woo notices the bartender and senses he's hiding something. As she searches the area, she finds a bottle containing the substance. With this evidence, they arrest Mongo. Jeon Pil tells Ji Woo that she really showed off her strength by taking everyone out and advises her to just wear a bulletproof vest if she is going to do that. At the station, Jeon Pil interrogates Mongo, trying to find out who makes the substance. Mongo warns him that the guy is really clever and hard to catch, referring to Kong Jae, who has become a big player in the business. Later, Ji Woo updates Mr. Choi, telling him that Mongo has been caught but hasn't revealed who he works for. Mr. Choi tells her to dig deeper. Meanwhile, Ji Woo searches for her dad's name in the police system and discovers some information. Taeju was with her dad right before he passed, and Captain Cha visited the murder scene after her father's death. At the same time, Mr. Choi informs Taeju that a new substance is hitting the market and that their clients might abandon them because of it. The next evening, a police officer tells Captain Cha that their target is on the move. He quickly calls for backup. Everyone gets ready, and they gather in a meeting room where their phones are taken away. Captain Cha announces that tonight's target is Mr. Choi. He explains that Choi Moo Jin supplies 90% of the substance in the country. He then tells them about a factory located on a large ship and mentions that it will take Mr. Choi about 50 minutes to reach there. 2 teams will go into the factory while the others provide backup. They all head out to catch him, sneaking onto the ship next to him. Mr. Choi is checking out the factory he recently bought. The captain tells Team A to go inside. Ji Woo doesn't want Mr. Choi to get caught, but she doesn't have her phone to warn him. Once inside the factory, everyone splits up. Ji Woo sees Mr. Choi but struggles to find a way to alert him with police officers everywhere. Suddenly, Mr. Choi's men notice Jeon Pil and start attacking him, trying to break the camera he's using to record everything. Jeon Pil approaches Mr. Choi, telling him to put his hands up, but just then, they hear gunshots, and the lights go out. Mr. Choi quickly sets fire to the substance to keep the police from finding anything. As he tries to escape, he spots Ji Woo and she doesn't shoot. He and Taeju jump into the water, leaving the narcotics team empty-handed. The police search the area and discover that 2 shots were fired at the electrical unit. Meanwhile, Ji Woo secretly places the gun that was used to kill her dad at the scene and tells the captain she found it. The serial number on the gun is scratched off, making it harder to trace. On the other hand, Mr. Choi is furious. Taeju asks why Ji Woo didn't give them a warning, but Mr. Choi doesn't answer. Then the captain gets a call from one of his officers, who reports that they checked all the guns on the team, and none of them fired a shot. Later, while sitting in her car, Ji Woo pulls out her other phone to call Mr. Choi, but he's still upset with her and doesn't answer. She heads into the police station. Inside, the captain is checking all the team's guns again, but once more, none of them have been fired. At dinner that night, Ji Woo asks Jeon Pil about Mr. Choi. Jeon Pil explains that Mr. Choi is the biggest dealer around and recently killed someone from the narcotics department. They're planning to try to catch him again. Just then, another friend shows up, and Ji Woo steps away to call Mr. Choi again. She tells him she didn't know about the raid ahead of time and warns him that there are 3 cameras in his hotel that the narcotics department is using to track him. Ji Woo explains that she didn't have any other way to warn Mr. Choi, so she fired her gun. Now, Mr. Choi has all the spy cameras in his hotel disconnected. Captain Cha is facing one defeat after another, feeling the pressure mount. Meanwhile, Kang Jae is eager for revenge against Mr. Choi. He gathers his men and heads to the gym where he used to train. At the gym, Kang Jae's men start attacking everyone with knives. Taeju is there, and instead of killing him, Kang Jae just breaks Taeju's arm and lets him go, just like they did 5 years ago. Meanwhile, Ji Woo follows Captain Cha as he meets with a man to hand over the gun for tracing the serial number. In the lab, they manage to recover the serial number from the gun. A little while later, police arrive at Mr. Choi's gym. Some people have been killed, and several others are seriously injured. Ji Woo also spots Taeju in an ambulance. She asks Jeon Pil if Mr. Choi is dead. Jeon Pil tells her no, Mr. Choi wasn't even there during the attack. During the investigation, they find the substance at the scene, but checking the CCTV doesn't lead them anywhere useful. Next, we see Mr. Choi at the funeral of the people that passed away. Ji Woo decides to check on him to see if he's okay. As she's leaving, she notices Captain Cha and Jeon Pil approaching, so she hides her face with her helmet. Both men are there to pay their respects. Taeju stops Jeon Pil and tells him that only one person can go inside to see Mr. Choi. The captain goes in, but Mr. Choi's men quickly surround him. The captain starts to speak, mentioning that he would be caught very soon. Mr. Choi responds that if the captain weren't a police officer, he would already be dead, adding that he will never be caught. Meanwhile, Kang Jae and his men are celebrating their victory. Kang Jae reminisces about not having seen Ji Woo in years and wonders where she's been. Meanwhile, a police officer shows a photo of Kang Jae, saying he got it from a car's dash cam near the gym. Ji Woo keeps to herself that she knows him. The police are waiting for Mr. Choi to make his next move. Mr. Choi is also anxious to act, knowing that if he doesn't move soon, his gang could fall apart. The captain decides to let Mongo go free and see how Mr. Choi will respond. Ji Woo speaks up, warning that if the 2 gangs clash, many people could get hurt. The captain shrugs it off, saying that bad people die, so what? Ji Woo then texts Mr. Choi to let him know that Mongo has been released, but it's a trap. Mr. Choi quickly calls Taeju and tells him to pull everyone back that he had earlier sent out. The captain tells his team that there's good news, one of their informants will flip, which could cause Mr. Choi's gang to fall apart from the inside. Ji Woo also sends Mr. Choi a message about this news. Meanwhile, as Taeju returns from meeting a client, he finds an envelope with some pills and a letter in his car. Ji Woo arrives at a spot where the captain is waiting for someone, and she notices someone is taking photos from a distance. Seeing that, she decides to leave. Just then, Taeju shows up. Ji Woo approaches to see who's taking pictures. Suddenly, Jeon Pil appears in front of her, and she tries to run away from him. After a bit of a struggle, Ji Woo manages to escape. As she leaves, she sees that Taeju was the one who came to meet the captain. This whole situation was part of the captain's plan. He wanted to find out if there was a traitor in the team. Jeon Pil then shows the captain the photos he took. He suspects Hae-jin, saying that ever since she joined them, their plans have been falling apart. Meanwhile, Ji Woo informs Mr. Choi that Taeju came to meet with the captain. Just then, Taeju walks up to Mr. Choi and says the meeting with the client went well, but Mr. Choi no longer trusts him and tells him to leave. In reality, the letter Taeju received said that if he wanted to know where Kang Jae was, he should go to that address. This letter was actually sent by the captain. The next day, Ji Woo investigates the gun's details. They manage to recover the serial number but can't trace who it was issued to. Ji Woo discovers that the gun belonged to someone named Song Jang-soo. She asks the captain about him, and at that time, she also had the knife that Mr. Choi gave her. If the captain had even hinted that the gun was connected to him, she would have killed him right then and there. The captain explains that Song Jang-soo was part of his team and was killed by Mr. Choi during his first week. This confuses Ji Woo even more because all the evidence now seems to point to Mr. Choi. Determined to get answers, she decides to confront him. When she asks Mr. Choi about it, he flat out denies everything. He claims the captain is a jerk and that he can't be trusted. Later at the police station, Jeon Pil invites Ji Woo to dinner, but she declines, saying she has work to do. Jeon Pil then starts following her as she asks around about Kang Jae and Mongo. She goes into a basement, and Jeon Pil hops into her car, asking what she's doing there. She tells him she's looking for information about Mongo and Kang Jae. As they're trying to figure things out, they spot Mongo. Jeon Pil says he's coming along, and they start following him. Meanwhile, Mr. Choi arrives at a restaurant for dinner. He senses that the people around him are waiting to attack, so he sends the owner to grab a cigarette and then starts fighting them off. Mongo drives his car toward a car manufacturing factory. Ji Woo and Jeon Pil park at the back and climb over the wall to sneak inside, hiding to keep an eye on Mongo. Just then, Kang Jae shows up to meet Mongo. He hands over some supplies, and Mongo takes them and leaves. Kang Jae knows that Ji Woo and Jeon Pil are watching and sends his men to take them out. Meanwhile, Mr. Choi is also fighting off Kang Jae's men when one of them stabs him with a knife. Back in the factory, Ji Woo and Jeon Pil try to fight off Kang Jae's guys, but eventually get caught. Kang Jae is pleased to see Ji Woo, especially since they have a long-standing rivalry. He tells her that it is nice to meet her.